and smash if they were, juice or no juice. Medina shuddered. The vibration was small but unmistakable. The first of the enemy were inside effective range. On the field, the flicker of the railguns was joined by slower, sweeping arcs of PDC fire, the bright pinpoints of Medina's own torpedoes.
That's a car.
Roberts found herself muttering curses like they were a prayer, and didn't know how long she would do it. The flickers of enemy drive plumes began to thicken and coalesce into a single bright shaft, drawing a line between the alien station and Medina. "They're getting between us," she said. "They got to stop them. They're getting between us. They're going to get here. They're going to board us." "No one on them to board us," Vandercost said again. "No, it's ships, those. Fists with engines to push them is all. Rams. We're still picking them off," Sully said. "Look, railguns still firing." It was true. The shots were careful, dangerous. They slid past Medina's drum so close, Roberts imagined she heard them hiss on the way past. But the enemy kept dying, exploding into scrap and vapor. The wave of enemy torpedoes was already gone, turned to debris and bad intentions. And the ships, closer and closer, brought fewer every minute. "We're taking hits,"
I think that says 75,
Vandercost
70.
said, glowering into his hand terminal. Roberts pulled up her own terminal. Pressure loss on the outermost layers of the drum. Not everywhere, but scattered. A hall here, a warehouse there. A water reservoir was whole, throwing mist and ice out in a pinwheel as the drum spun it away. The Mormons had built the outer parts of the drum thick against the hard radiation of space. But no one was dying. Not yet. "How are they hitting us?" "Dead scraps," Sully said. "It's the debris from the torpedoes. It's nothing." It might have been true that it was only debris, but it wasn't nothing. As she watched, another alert opened, was flagged, assigned out. Her team wasn't called yet. Wouldn't have been a cargo container. Not a real
Another
one
airline
either.
train.
Built to standards for a mech or an automated dock to handle, along with thousands of others with the same dimensions and handholds and doors. This had been a custom job, cobbled together in the belt out of equal parts scrap and ingenuity. The second hull was added later, the welds still bright at the corners. The crash couches weren't actual couches, just thick sheets of gel glued to the walls with straps like climbing harnesses to hold their bodies against them. Add to that the fact that they had no active sensors, that they were on the tumble, that the dozen men and women with them were indifferently trained, that probably more than half of them had been involved in conspiracies against Mars and Earth in the not-so-distant past, that their weapons were old, their armor a collection from half a dozen different sources. And, of course, that if the enemy railgun at regret. Bobby switched the channel controls, killing all the mics but hers. "No whining. We knew this was a possibility. If you don't want to participate, feel free to leave now. Otherwise, check your seals and weapons and be ready for a fight when we hit surface. Our job is to get control of those guns." Whatever the rest of it was. Naomi shook her head.
12:44.
Neither does anyone else. They still call it science. Most of what we know isn't why things are what they are. We just figure out enough about how they work that we can predict the next thing that's going to happen. That's what you've got. Enough to predict. And if you think you're right, then I do too. So let's do this. She shook her head, but not at him. A massive N equals 1 study where our null hypothesis is that we all get killed. Not necessarily, Holden said. They only have 15 to our 1. We might still take them. We have Bobby and Amos. This time she did laugh. He put his arm under hers and she leaned against him. If it doesn't work, we won't be any more fucked than we are now, she said. Those last were the hardest. New colonies still trying to force their way into local ecosystems so exotic that their bodies could hardly recognize them as life at all. Isolated, exhausted, sometimes at the edge and what they wanted was to send back help. He listened to their voices, saw the distress in their eyes. He couldn't help but love them a little bit. Under the best conditions, disasters and plagues did that.
What are you doing?
It wasn't universally true. There would always be hoarders and price gouging, people who closed their doors to refugees and left them freezing and starving. But the impulse to help was there too, to carry a burden together, even if it meant having less for yourself. Humanity had come as far as it had in a haze of war, sickness, violence, and genocide. History was drenched in blood. But it also had cooperation and kindness, generosity, intermarriage. The one didn't come without the other, and Holden had to take comfort in that. The sense that however terrible humanity's failings were, there was still a little more in them worth admiring. He did what he could to answer the most pressing messages, offer what hope he could.
Oh, look, there's another train.
The voice, however briefly, of Medina Station.
This one
Coordinating supplies for all the colonies was more than he could manage. It would be full-time work for a staff of dozens at least, and he was only one man with a radio. Still, just seeing the need, dipping his toes into the oceanic task of being the physical hub of 1,000 different solar systems, gave him a covert sense of hope for the future. He'd been right. There was a niche here. Providing the plan worked, providing they didn't go down, providing that any of a million things he hadn't even thought of yet didn't swing through and destroy everything he was still looking for and planning. There was always the forgotten arm, the thing you didn't see coming. Hopefully, the thing Marco and Aros wouldn't see coming either. So how long is this window or wake or whatever it is that we're shooting for? Amos asked. Time was almost out. The question now was just how fast Inaros wanted to be going when they came through the gate. If he cut the braking thrust and came through fast, it would throw off the timing. If the Giambattista went through the Arcadia gate too late, it would be the one to quickly, quietly vanish away. If it went through too early, Naomi's curve would already have decayed down to nothing, and the Free Navy would pass into the slow zone in safety. They'd gone back to the Rocinante. Alex and Bobby in the cockpit, ready for battle if battle came. Holden and Naomi were strapped into the couches in the command deck. Amos, on float, had come up for the company as much as anything else. They weren't at battle stations yet. If it came to that, this was probably the last time he'd see Amos in the flesh. Holden tried not to think about it. It'll be maybe 5 minutes, Naomi said. Part of that's going to depend on the mass and energy of the ships they bring through. If we're lucky, maybe as much as those ships. Clarissa's eyes sheened over too, and she put a hand on Naomi's arm. I know, Clarissa said. If you need me, you can find me. It's okay, Peaches, Amos said. Me and the captain had a talk about it. We're good. He gave Holden a cheerful thumbs up. The timer ticked down. Holden took a long, slow breath and opened his channel for the Giambattista.
This isn't a real fanny excursion. This is the most
he said. This is Captain Holden of the Rocinante. Please begin your passage burn now.
7 trains as a total.
I need you to go through the gate in... He checked the timer. 18 minutes. Cheers, River, the Giambattista's captain said. It has been, Simo. The connection dropped. On the screen, the Giambattista reported a hard burn starting. Holden shifted the display to show it. A single bright star in the blackness. A drive plume wider than the ice hauler that it was driving. He wanted to believe there was something off about the color of the light, as if the high-energy tuning Naomi had done with it was visible to him. But that was just his mind playing tricks. A new counter appeared on the display. The Giambattista's expected passage through the Arcadia ring went from 17 minutes to 60. The drive plumes of the Free Navy ships packed in together together so tightly that it looked like one massive blaze of fire appeared on the edge of the ring, tracking in toward its center. "You want me to take a pot shot at them?" Bobby asked. "Railgun could probably reach them at this point." "No," Naomi said before Holden could answer. "I don't know what sending mass through the gates right now would do." A line appeared in the model, low on the scale, moving toward the dying curve. The ring gate grew brighter with the breaking burns of the enemy, until it looked like the negative image of our specks clear.
Winter's here, the snow is falling on our car as we drive for miles to that little town called home.